What is going on, everyone? This is Eric coming at you from just outside of Hartford, Connecticut. And today, we're going to look at one of the longer trade breakdowns in the trade breakdown series as we discuss the Carson Wentz draft pick trade. And this one occurred, there were a couple big trades that led up to it, and those were in March and April of 2016. So we didn't write a definitive date, we just did March 2016. This is going to be one of the longer videos. I actually have 3 pages of notes to the side of me, so please stand with me. It might take a little bit. And I did have to kind of break it down by draft just because it was the only way to conceivably have it look halfway clean. So without further ado, we're going to jump right in. And the first trade in this trade didn't even involve the Carson Wentz draft pick. So the Philadelphia Eagles would trade the 13th overall selection along with a pair of veteran established defensive players in linebacker Kiko Alonso and cornerback Byron Maxwell to the Miami Dolphins in exchange for the 8th overall selection. So basically, the Eagles at this point were changing over from the Chip Kelly regime to the Doug Pederson regime. And Doug Pederson had got both Alonso and Maxwell in the previous offseason, trading LaShawn McCoy for Alonso and signing Maxwell to a gigantic deal. Neither one necessarily panned out for Philly, so they just kind of wanted to cut bait, get rid of both of them, and they moved up 5 spots in the draft to do it. So we're going to start with Miami here just because Philadelphia ends up trading the 8th pick. So with that 13th overall selection, Miami would select offensive tackle Laremy Tunsil. Now, before the quarterback race began, the Tennessee Titans held the first pick in the 2016 draft. And a lot of experts had Laremy Tunsil going first overall to Tennessee. Now, Tennessee ends up trading down, and the Rams move into the top pick. They take Jared Goff. Obviously, Philly moves to 2. They take Carson Wentz. But what ends up happening with Tunsil? So, Tunsil was expected at that point to maybe be the 3rd pick or the 4th pick. No. He keeps falling because of a draft day video that came out of him allegedly, smoking banned drugs. So, that plummeted his draft stock, and the Dolphins end up snagging him at 13 when it was considered a pipe dream for them to pick him up at 8 before the draft started. So, Tunsil is really a solid starting player for the Dolphins for 3 seasons. 1 season he spent at guard, and then he moved back to his tackle position for the last 2 before being traded. Now, his trade will be a trade breakdown in a year or 2 from now. It's way too soon to call that one. Now, linebacker Kiko Alonso had a strong year 1, followed by another 2 strong years. And then the big thing with him was he was a big tackler. So he made 115 plus tackles each of those 3 seasons. Then he started to draw criticism after a few vicious hits over those 3 seasons. And one of them, of course, is the one on Joe Flacco, where that basically started a fight between Miami and Baltimore, and that drew a lot of controversy. And then he ends up getting traded. We're not going to discuss that one. He's traded for another inconsequential linebacker to New Orleans. So, yeah. Lastly, for Miami, we have cornerback Byron Maxwell, who was a below-average starter for just over a year. So he spent the first year there, and then just a couple weeks after gets hurt, and then he ends up just getting cut. So, yeah. So now Philadelphia has the 8th overall pick. Now they wanted Carson Wentz, and they were not going to get Carson Wentz with the 8th overall pick. So they end up trading the 8th overall pick along with the 77th and 100th overall picks to the Cleveland Browns, as well as their 2017 first round pick and their 2018 second round pick in exchange for the 2nd overall selection and a 2017 4th round selection. So with the 2nd overall pick, the Eagles select quarterback Carson Wentz, and Carson Wentz, basically, he ends up taking the starter's role almost immediately after the Minnesota Vikings had a tragic event with Teddy Bridgewater. They traded for Sam Bradford, and the Eagles decided it makes more sense to start Carson Wentz, get him the reps in right off the bat. And he starts off hot. So he does really good early on for the Eagles, but then he ends up just cooling off dramatically, especially after they crushed the Steelers in week 3, and he was decent. Now, he actually completes a franchise record 379 passes in his rookie year. Now, 2017 turns it around, and he becomes a legitimate MVP candidate. What ends up happening is he tears his ACL and LCL in Week 14 against the Rams, ending his season. But the team would win the Super Bowl without him. And he comes back in Week 3 of 2018, does okay, but it ends up getting revealed that he was dealing with a fractured back. So he ends up missing the last 3 weeks of the season as well as the playoff run. And then 2019, he does okay, but nothing great. Passes over 4,000 yards, though. So he was the first receiver in Eagles history to throw over, or the first, quarterback to throw for over 4,000 yards. Then 2020, he ends up struggling and getting benched. Now, we'll see what happens. That's why we're getting this video done now. We'll see what happens. He might very well get traded. If he does, well. So he made one Pro Bowl. It was a one-time second-team All-Pro selection. And many would argue that he would have won the MVP in 2017 had he stayed healthy. So, now, finally, we're going to discuss the Cleveland Browns. So, Cleveland does what Cleveland does best. And they decide to trade. So, the 8th overall selection ends up getting traded to Tennessee. So, they would trade the 8th and the 176th selections to Tennessee in exchange for the 15th, 76th, and a 2017 second-round pick. So, Tennessee, with that pick, with the 8th overall pick, would draft offensive tackle Jack Conklin, and he had a very, very strong rookie season for Tennessee. And he had another strong 2017 season before tearing his ACL in the playoffs. Now, he would end up coming back in 2018, but he kept missing time due to various other injuries. And he has a strong 2019 season, but at this point, it was apparent he was the right tackle. He wanted to be a left tackle who leave the team in free agency after the 2019 season. And the 176th pick just ends up getting traded away by Tennessee. We're not going to discuss that one. So with the 3 picks that Cleveland gets, well, the 2 in the 2016 draft, we have the 15th overall pick, which they would use on wide receiver Corey Coleman. And oh boy, so Corey Coleman ends up breaking his hand early in his rookie season. And he ends up just recording 33 catches without any touchdowns. He would break his hand early again in 2017, the exact same hand, and he would miss a chunk of time. Now, he's famous or infamous for his moment where in the 2017 season, Week 17, he drops a pass that would have won the Browns their first and only game. Instead, the drop signified an 0-16 season for the Cleveland Browns. And at that point, it was apparent he was done. So they end up trading him away. And they would trade him away for a 2020 7th round pick. So we will get to that when we get to the 2020 draft. I just want to kind of continue year by year just because it's such a big trade. So, yeah. So then the 77th pick, remember, from Philadelphia, Cleveland would trade that to the Carolina Panthers along with the 141st pick in exchange for the 93rd, 129th, and 168th. So we'll start with Carolina here. And Carolina would use the 77th pick to select cornerback Daryl Worley. So Daryl Worley was a solid starter for 2 years before he himself was traded, ironically, to Philadelphia for wide receiver Torrey Smith. Smith never develops, and Worley doesn't even make it past a month for Philly, so we'll see. That was kind of a wash trade. Just want to mention it there. The 141st pick would be used on cornerback Zach Sanchez, who was a backup reserve for a single season and then ends up getting cut after that season's over. Nothing great for him. So Cleveland, with the 93rd pick, would select quarterback Cody Kessler. And Cody Kessler was okay as a rookie. And he ends up becoming the 3rd stringer in 2017. And then he ends up getting traded, and we will discuss that one in the 2019 draft era, because he gets traded for a 2019 7th round pick. So the 129th pick in the 2016 draft, Cleveland would use to select safety Derek Kindred. And Derek Kindred has a solid rookie year and a decent, not great 2017. Of course, these 2 years the Browns go combined, 1-31, so no one's really doing great there. And he ends up getting cut after a below-average season in 2018. The 168th pick would be used on guard Spencer Drango, and Drango was a below-average starter for 2 years before getting cut. The last pick from 2016 that we're going to discuss is the 100th pick, again traded from Philadelphia to Cleveland, And this pick would be traded to the Oakland Raiders in exchange for picks 114 and 154. So Oakland would select, remember at the time Oakland would select quarterback Connor Cook. And Connor Cook was the third stringer most of his rookie year. And Oakland actually had a really solid 2017 season. Now, what ends up happening is Derek Carr obviously breaks his leg at the end of the regular season. And then the backup ends up getting hurt in their Week 17 matchup. He was unable to play for the playoff game, so Connor Cook's first career start in the NFL happened to come in the playoffs. And obviously, it didn't go that well for him. So, yeah, there's that. And Connor Cook, honestly, gets pushed back to third string in 2017 and ends up getting cut. So, nothing great for him. Now, with the 114th pick, the Cleveland Browns would select wide receiver Ricardo Lewis. And Ricardo Lewis was an okay wide receiver three for 2 years, but he did miss all of the 2018 season with a neck injury. He ends up getting cut. And then 40 picks later at 154, they would select another receiver in Jordan Payton, who caught only a single pass in his NFL career for the Browns. So that's it for 2016. A lot of moving parts. Let's jump to 2017. So we're going to start with the Eagles here, just because they got the Browns' 4th round pick. So it was actually going to be a 5th round pick, but the Eagles put in a condition that if the Browns had a conditional 4th, the Eagles would take it, and that happened. So that pick would be 139. So the 139th pick ends up actually getting traded to Minnesota, and so the Eagles would trade 139 along with 230 for pick 132. And the 132nd pick would be used on running back Donnell Pumphrey, and this one hurts as an Eagles fan. So Pumphrey actually is the NCAA all-time leading rusher. Now, that's always very controversial because they count bowl games for Pumphrey, but not for everybody. So a lot of people would say, no, he's not. A lot of people would say, yes, he is. So Pumphrey, undersized running back. He ends up not even... He basically gets outplayed by a lot of other running backs on the team. He barely makes the roster, and then he ends up tearing his hamstring in practice early in the season. So he ends up getting placed on the IR, doesn't even make the team in 2018, and that's essentially the end of Pumphrey. He goes to the Alliance of American Football, comes back to the Eagles, and then gets cut again. Really, nothing comes with him. So, yeah. Now, Minnesota ends up trading away both picks 139 and 230, so we're not going to go into detail on those. So now we're back to the Cleveland Browns. And the Browns would actually send the 12th. So the Eagles' first round pick that they got would be the 12th overall pick. And the Browns would send that pick to Houston. This will be a future video. This is going to be the Deshaun Watson trade breakdown. I did not have the time to get Deshaun in this one. Obviously, this video is going to be 20 plus minutes. So then the 52nd pick, this one acquired from the Tennessee Titans. The Browns end up selecting quarterback DeShone Kizer. Now, DeShone Kizer. So Kizer ends up becoming a starter early on for the Browns. And he just struggles. So he just really struggles horribly. He gets benched and has to come back and struggles even more so. So he leads the league, tossing 22 interceptions. Now, he ends up getting traded immediately after that season. So he gets traded along with a 2018 draft pick or two 2018 draft picks for safety Demarius Randall and two 2018 draft picks. So essentially the two teams flopped their 4th and 5th rounders. So now this is the 2018 draft, so we're just going to kill this trade real quick. So the Browns, safety Demarius Randall. Demarius Randall wasn't exactly the best. He was an okay starter for a pair of seasons for the Browns before leaving the team via free agency. 114, we will get to that one shortly. That's going to be another trade. Essentially, the Browns trade 2 picks that they traded for in this video for another pick, so we'll get to that one shortly. And the 150th pick would be used on defensive end, Jannard Avery. And Jannard Avery, unfortunately for them, he did okay. He actually had a solid rookie year, but he ends up really starting to fall out of favor in his second year, and they end up trading him after a year and a half. But he recorded 4.5 sacks. We'll get to his trade in a moment. So Green Bay, on the flip side, they end up with DeShone Kizer and a fourth and a fifth. So DeShone Kizer in Green Bay did not do well. So again, he would struggle when given limited action in the NFL. And he essentially comes in 2 relief appearances, doesn't do much of anything at all, and gets cut after the 1 year. So the Packers would trade the 101st pick, so we're not going to discuss that one. And the 138th pick would be used on guard Cole Madison. And Cole Madison missed all of the 2018 season for a mental break. Essentially, his best friend had committed suicide, so he just needed time off from the league, so understandable. And then he was a backup in 2019 before tearing his ACL in practice, and then he gets cut after the 2019 season is over. Yeah, so continuing on with the 2018 draft, the Browns would end up sending away the 64th pick to the Indianapolis Colts. Remember, the 64th pick was acquired from Philadelphia, so this is the last original pick from the Carson Wentz trade. So they would send pick 64 to the Indianapolis Colts for 67 and 178. So the 64th pick, Indianapolis would select defensive tackle Taquan Lewis. And Taquan Lewis hasn't been great for the team. So he's basically just been a backup for 3 years for the Indianapolis Colts. He's had to step up at times in 2020, and he's done okay. He had a game where he had 2 sacks this year. So the 67th pick would be used on defensive end Chad Thomas for the Browns, and he was an okay depth piece for 2 seasons before getting released. And the 178th pick would get traded. Now, remember the 114th pick from the DeShone Kizer trade? That one, along with 178, get traded to the New England Patriots for pick 105. So 114, New England trades it. We're not going to discuss that. 178, the Patriots would select linebacker Christian Sam. So Christian Sam, he spends all of 2018 on the practice squad, and then he ends up not doing much and then ends up getting cut. Now, with 105, the Browns would select wide receiver Antonio Callaway, who had an okay rookie year, okay start to year 2, and then basically his off-the-field problems started catching up to him. He would start coming to practice late. He would miss meetings, and the Browns said enough of that. The straw that broke the camel's back was also a arrest for marijuana. So, yeah, that ends 2018, so let's go to 2019. And early on, the Browns had traded away one of the players that they had drafted, if you remember, from this trade here in 2016, where they selected Sean Coleman, the offensive tackle, at 76. They would trade Sean Coleman to the San Francisco 49ers. So Sean Coleman in San Francisco did not play year 1 at all, and he ended up breaking his leg in the preseason in his second year there, 2019, and he opted out of the 2020 season. Understandable. So we've yet to see him in San Francisco. And in exchange for Coleman, the Browns got the 243rd pick, which they would trade. And they would trade that pick along with the wide receiver Josh Gordon to New England for the 170th pick. So the Patriots would trade away 243, so we're not going to worry about that. But Josh Gordon was a decent receiver for the Patriots for parts of 2 different seasons before being cut. Now, he got hurt, and then they cut him. It was a bit of a questionable decision. A lot of people were upset about it. And, PED suspensions, obviously, PED problems really started to catch up with him. The Patriots like, we're not dealing with this guy. So what did the Browns get for Josh Gordon? Oh, well, they would select kicker Austin Seibert with the 170th pick. And Austin Seibert had an up-and-down rookie campaign for the Browns. And then week 1 of the 2020 season, he missed an extra point. He missed a field goal, so the Browns got rid of him. So nothing, really. Remember Cody Kessler? They traded him to the Jacksonville Jaguars for the 221st pick. So Cody Kessler in Jacksonville was okay over 4 starts in the 2018 season. And then he had started that season as a backup, made his way to starter, and then ends up getting benched at the end of that season. And then he ends up getting cut So nothing great. What did the Browns do with their 221st pick? They would select cornerback Donnie Lewis. And Donnie Lewis has bounced around on the practice squad for a year and then was cut. So he basically went to the practice squad, hung around the practice squad. That was the end of him. So now we're almost done. We're in the 2020 NFL draft. And remember Corey Coleman again from the Jack Conklin trade? Yeah, he got traded to the Buffalo Bills for the 236th pick. So how did Corey Coleman do in Buffalo? Good question. Nothing at all. He did nothing. You want to know why? Basically, the Bills were on Hard Knocks, and he made it known publicly that he wanted to be traded because he wasn't getting the starter reps, and the Bills said, all right, sayonara, goodbye, we don't want you here. Got rid of him, cut him just like that. So, yeah, Buffalo got absolutely nothing out of Corey Coleman. As for the 236, like I said, the Browns would trade it, along with, they would trade 236 to the Green Bay Packers in exchange for offensive lineman Justin McCray and the 244th selection. So, with the 236th pick, Green Bay would select safety Vernon Scott. And Vernon Scott has been a special teamer in 2020. Nothing spectacular, but he's also a 7th-round pick, so that's what you want. Now, Cleveland, with their two things that they got, so we'll discuss offensive lineman Justin McCray first. McCray, had started 4 games for the Browns, but was typically a backup for the 2019 season before leaving the team. And 244 would get traded. So the Browns would trade the 244th pick along with the 74th overall pick to the New Orleans Saints in exchange for the 88th and a 2021 3rd-round pick. So with the 74th pick, the Saints would select linebacker Zach Bond. And Zach Bond has mostly been a special teamer as a rookie, but they're hoping that he can actually start to develop and get more reps in the defense soon. Now, they would trade away the 244th pick. We're not going to discuss that. So Cleveland, with the 88th pick, would select defensive tackle Jordan Elliott, who was a backup for his rookie year. Seems to be a theme for 3rd-round picks this year. And obviously, the 2021 3rd-round pick, we don't know. And the last trade to discuss here was the Jannard Avery trade. So Philadelphia got defensive end Jannard Avery in exchange for a 2021 4th-round pick. And Avery has essentially had a reserve role for a year and a half. Doesn't have a sack for the Eagles. So, yeah. So the Browns, this trade isn't officially over yet, as the Browns own New Orleans' 3rd-round pick and Philadelphia's 4th-round pick in 2021. They're bound to be pretty close to each other. Philadelphia is probably going to get like the 7th pick of the 4th round, and New Orleans is probably looking around the 28th, 29th. So, yeah, that was the gigantic mess that is the Carson Wentz trade. I hope you guys enjoyed this. This one took a lot of time. I know I was fumbling with my words at a couple moments there. I apologize for that. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Again, Carson Wentz trade. Have a good one.